sometimes I'm just too silly. That's all I can say. All right. So, being silly, let's move on to the next verse that we're going to be talking
I
about.
don't think you're too silly, Carrie.
No.
I've met too silly. Have you met too silly? I've met too silly, and it's whoo.
Yeah, well, I guess, okay, if you want to
No.
put it like that, okay. All right. I would agree.
No,
I would agree. Maybe
no.
not too silly, but I guess I give myself just enough to laugh at. So, if I can laugh at myself, then that's good. And
Yeah.
it's not even like making fun of myself. It's just seeing some of the silly antics, recognizing it through ego and going, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah. And it also makes you more human to everyone else because, people could easily put you on a pedestal
Yeah, which we don't
and
want.
look up to you, and you don't want that. And so it
No,
makes you more like everyone else,
I agree.
So it's good. It's
I agree.
not too silly.
Well, and Ken talks about it. He talks about the shaman shuffle. You get people that are enlightened, and there's so much in their enlightenment that there's a way that they present that doesn't feel, I wouldn't say that doesn't feel genuine, because they're really at that place of maturation. But for somebody else to go, we're still in process. you know, we're still walking towards something. And yeah, you can be in that moment, but still being able to be at the place where somebody can touch it and go, okay, this is where, so just kind of in deifying Jesus or Yeshua, it doesn't matter. I will use both because we've done it in several camps.
Yeah.
But when we deify him too high, then it becomes something where we begin worshiping the individual instead of what the individual was sent in to do with the message.
Yes.
And
made it
that's
very
where,
clear that we would do what he does plus,
yeah,
so that we would surpass him. So we
exactly.
shouldn't look at him like he's not reachable or touchable. His message wasn't that. His message was, you will do what I do, plus you will go beyond that and do more.
Right.
And
there's those pieces that have needed to be brought forward so that we can attach ourselves to them as far as the maturation, instead of putting Yeshua on the pedestal of non-being touchable. It's like, he walked like we did. He learned like we did. It's, when he came in, he went through the veil of forgetting as well. And he had to be in Sheol and ask questions and study and have things revealed through spirit. And, for some people, that is probably a very hard thing to hear because we have deified him. But when you look at the scriptures and say that the scriptures are deifying us, you are gods, then we have to look and see, what does the indoctrination say? What did the sacred writings say? What did Yeshua say? And what do we say? And are they all lining up? Because if they're not lining up,
and that's an impossible thing to even do in the English, because it doesn't all line up there. I mean, you can pull stuff out,
yeah,
and make it line up. You can, but the whole thing does have an agenda behind it. So, it depends on what you pull out.
Well, and that's why many people have walked away from religion and from the Bible, because they see that there's things that don't line up, that there's holes. And when we look in the sacred languages, there is no holes. I have someone that's asking right now about the Old Testament God versus the New Testament God. And I was like, they're the same. It just doesn't look like that, because the face that was being presented was to carry forth an agenda to make something different. In fact, if you think about it, if the New Testament God was presented a certain way, and then the Old Testament was presented, and you're like, okay, the Old Testament God is angry, expects sacrifice, is killing people, demands justice and all of that, then you're never going to look at that way. Because innately we know that God should be of love, but what was presented was not. So therefore, don't look at it. But yet some of those foundational pieces, which is in the Tanakh, the Old Testament, are the pivotal pieces necessary to activate, and you can't not have them because it's the foundation. And I'm not even talking about English Torah.
No.
I'm talking about the divine masculine through the language, which is Tav Ora, right? Torah, Tav in front, Tav Ora. So in order to increase light within us, or, and then the Hey that reveals the covenant of light that reveals. And the English translation has done such a butchered job, or even the Hebrew translation on the surface.
Yeah.
Because they lost the oral teachings. Now, the oral teachings were how to decode the language.
I never thought about it like that.
So when you get the priesthood of darkness that was set up during the Hasmonean dynasty, and they kicked out the Zadokites, the Zadokites knew how to read the code.
Oh.
They took all the sacred scrolls with them.
Yes.
So then you have a priesthood, hence why they were called the priest of dark, or the priesthood of darkness, or the sons of darkness, because they didn't have the light, the revelation, the revealing of how to read scrolls. So you go into and you find a Torah scroll, but you don't have the codes. You don't have the esoteric side, right? Which is the dark, because you're not of the light. You didn't learn mother's teachings and how to decode them. So now you take these Torah scrolls and you make them into something that is a literal translation. And then because you don't have the esoteric side, and because your temple got destroyed, you create a new religion of more rules based upon the surface rules that were given in the surface interpretation, because you lost the oral interpretation of how to interpret them through the codes.
Yes.
And then to hide it, because you want to stay in your place of power, you go and destroy the priests of light, who knew the day was coming, and they had to hide the sacred scrolls.
Yeah. Wow.
Until there would be a generation that would be able to unlock them. The priests of light that are here, once again, to bring it forth. So that's why, in looking into these writings, why we can't take the surface interpretation without it causing issues. That shows an angry God instead of a loving God. And we're going to see that. There's a couple other verses. I'm going to be going over one with you on Wednesday as we talk about some of our other things, but we're going to go in a verse that is very much important for us to talk about today. And because of the surface interpretation, has caused much divide within families and broken relationships, when the exact opposite is what is being said. So anyway, hence why this parable of the wise and foolish virgin is also important, because of where we are seeing those who didn't go the path of the right hand, that decided to go into the path of darkness without having any light to being able to balance those things out, and how they ended up going into gross darkness because they skipped their heart. Their heart never got pierced. So of course you're going to take that power and you're going to keep pushing it further and further and further away to meet your agenda. So having said that, let's go into, let me pull this up and hopefully we'll be able to see it. Okay. So the verse that we are going to be looking at today, well, actually we'll go back a little bit just as a review. So when we were looking at the other verse, when we taking a look at it, it was the response of the wise to the foolish request. And we were seeing that they were responding through the power of the Father. And it was really their choice to say, we are not instructing you, because you are repeatedly wanting to keep that power, which you obtained, but keep your fallen flesh, meaning serving self, still with the beast ego attached. And that really they were responding in a cry from their heart as well, going, we feel for you. There is this mourningful, shrieking cry that we have because we understand mother's bitterness, Mar, because you are going to have to face that. And we're crying and mourning for you. And yet all the instruction was here. Like, why didn't you learn this? Because the instruction was always here in the way of one. And that everything was sufficient for you if you had taken mother's path in the spiritual way to increase and have the light continue to burn within you. But because you didn't, because you refused the revelation on mother's side, the sword and the plow is against you. And so you're going to have to go. You cannot be with us anymore because we are refusing to teach you, because you keep trying to take our light. You're taking it from us because you're not wanting mother's instructions. So you're taking. And so it's now the sword and the light is against you. So in the process of buying and selling, you're going to have to deal with your bloodshed and your blood guilt. You're going to have to realize that the things that you did to get power and energy from a source that is full of light, that went the way of the right-hand path, you are going to now have to deal with that. And oh, by the way, you're going to have to do it in humility by connecting to mother, which you haven't wanted to do. And you will have to face the sword and plow because everyone has to. See, those on the right-hand path, and this will make sense to you, those who are on the right-hand path took the zayin and allowed it to plow the soil of their heart.
Yeah.
Right? So that instrument was used to take up the fallow ground and till it so the seed could be planted to mature. But if you choose not to have the plow, which is the gentle way of mother saying, okay, we need to break up this fallow ground, the sword is coming. And then you still have to have the plow.
Yeah.
So you end up having to go through both. And I don't mean to laugh about it, but in a way, it's, I find it kind of, in a way, I find it humorous because making it personal, like, again, if we don't make it personal to us, then why are we studying it? I'm thinking about all the times that I did not want the plow, right? There was just things that I was like, I'm not doing it. I am not doing it. And so the sword would come to pierce me, and then I would still have to be plowed. It's like,
yeah, it's inevitable.
We all do, because
it takes huge effort.
Yes.
To resist that and go the other way, more so than if you just give in, because that's his grace. That's grace. Exactly. Because it just keeps after you.
I know.
Until you give in, And then as you mature, you get to where you know what's on the other side and you can get through it better, you have tools. You've gained
exactly. And in a way, in the place of maturation, right? So we're not talking from 0 to 12 years of maturation spiritually. We're talking the place of bride to become queen. You then actually welcome it in a way because there's wisdom that's coming from it. It's like, okay, I'm going to have pain, but I'd rather have the pain of the plow than the sword and the plow. So if I continue to allow myself to be plowed, then the sword can cut off that which is no longer serving me, which is less painful than me being blindsided because I'm being belligerent and I'm being stubborn and I'm not allowing it. Oh, this is wisdom. This is wisdom. And so there's that phrase, the things that you resist continue to persist. It's going to be there until you deal with it. And that's what this parable in their response was, is like, you cannot get away from this. Now I'm going to pull something up. I should have had this pulled up before. So give me a moment because I'm going to pull this up because it was something that I needed to connect to last week, but it is a connecting bridge between the response of the wise to the foolish. And then the next verse, and I need to pull this up. I meant to, I had a little side note, but it was small print and I didn't bother reading the small print. Not what most of us do. We just don't like reading the small print. Okay, let's shift on down. We're going to tie this to Revelation 13. This was my intent from the very beginning when I went into the 144,000 into the wise and foolish virgins, was also to connect Revelation chapter 13 with the beast in with all of this. Because, I mean, initially that's where I started. Let's talk about the Cayutha. I mean, you know that. And some of the earlier messages on our channel was we need to look at what the Cayutha is. We need to see what the beast of Revelation is, because it's not what they're telling us. In fact, it's the living. It's the living that have been pierced, connected to their heart, have the oneness message. They found life out of death. And so when we connect the wise, we were already showing that. Even in the word wise, it shows the chet, the life over death. So the beast of Revelation 13, aka the living creatures of Revelation 6, same word, are those who found life having entered into death by coming in and living in Sheol, where we're at, asking all these questions because we forgot who we were. Mm-hmm. So in the connecting place in this has to do with buying and selling. So let's look at verse 17 and 18 here. So very, very interesting in here. Verse 17. So this has to do with the mark. And he caused all, small and great, and rich and poor, the sons of freedom and slaves, to have given to them the signature upon their right hands or upon their foreheads, chapter 17, as no man might be able to buy or sell unless he has the signature of the name of the beast of prey or of the beast or the number of his name. So when we take a look at this, there's only one thing that I just kind of want to say about verse 16. Because I find this so amazing, especially based on what you were sharing with Ken earlier that we didn't record about going to the right hand. So upon their hands, so here's hand, yad. And look what is added on the front, an olive. So we have a hand, we have the oneness factor, we have mother presenting as being part of one, and we know that the aleph is connected to God because of this, the tetragrammaton, yod he vav he 26, the double yods and the vav, how to make the aleph, it all equals the tetragrammaton, becoming one. I and my Father are one, I am with the Father, with God, it's all connected to the aleph. So here we have the hand. And on the hand, we have the aleph. And then it shows the yod hey. So remember, when we were talking, what did the foolish lose in their lamp? The yod hey on the suffix side. They didn't have this. They didn't have this. Because yod hey, vav hey, yod hey, mother, completed mother. So father is a completed mother. Yes. And it shows right here. And then it has the vav. This is the exact suffix to the lamp. Yes. With the exception of right here, shouldn't say exact. In the lamp, there's a yod. This right here is one that has the yod hey, the completed mother on the father's side, but is now walking in meekness. And remember, we were talking last week that the foolish don't walk in power under control. So in their flesh, on their hand, and this is so amazing. Here we have the word yamin. So this literally is the hand of the right hand. So those who are of the mark went the way of the right hand path, and they found oneness. And then we have this aleph vav, which is the oneness identity. Connect to it, right? We got it's not a hey vav, it's an aleph vav. So that which is silent, right? Because the aleph and the hey are silent letters. So this oneness principle is silent, yet in its same regard, it's deafening. Because once you hear it and you see it, you can't unhear it and you can't unsee it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's saying, this is that small whisper that says, we are all one. Connect. Because this is the process of ascension. Now look at this.
Mm-hmm.
This is incredible. So I just highlighted the Ein Lamed, knowing the purpose and seeing the purpose of instruction for ascension, because that's really what it is. And it means upon. And then it says upon their foreheads. This is the house of the eye.
House of knowing.
It's the house of knowing, but this is really speaking about our third eye.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we are the temple, right? Because Bayit is an idiom for temple. We are the temple, the house of the eye. And we're not talking about, because they translated it as forehead, and it does mean forehead. But what eye do we have in our forehead?
Mm-hmm.
Our third eye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
So this is the activation of our third eye, which is the spiritual antenna that connects us to the higher realms, the intelligent air energy that is coming in through a spiritual nature. And look, it has the Yod Hey again on the suffix side, a completed mother that is activated on father in meekness while they're in the flesh. So I really wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's good.
Because and then we have, look at this, one more point. So when it says the name, this is the word for name. The first three letters here is Rosh. This is the head. This has to do with leadership. This has to do with sovereignty. This has to do with first fruits, right? Shem, the name of one name. Why are they one name? Because they went through the fires of purification as well as the water. So you have the consuming fires and the waters of purification that mark you with honor, authority, and character as being in a conspicuous place, as being separate, yet as one, as a 100-fold measurement. It's flipping right here.
Yeah.
And on the very first word of it, it's the work, abed. This is the work that we do, that Mother is trying to get us in. Connect to Mother in humility so she can mark you with her covenant. And this is her work to get you to be able to get to this point. So then on the very next verse, in the very, very, very next verse where we connect to it, it says that no man might be able to buy or sell. There's the same word of when the wise said to the foolish, you need to go to those who buy and sell. And what this is saying right here is that it says no man might be able to. Well, that's not the case here, because really it's the door to the instruction in the way of one for those. And this is interesting because Del means weak, feeble, and lean. Anash means weak and feeble. So twice over, you are weak and feeble because you need to take the spiritual path. So this is not saying that no man might, it's saying, no, you are weak and feeble, and it's important for you to be instructed in the way of one because you're weak and feeble as mankind, because you're in the fire, Ish, olive sheen, and the spiritual path is in the middle of the fire. So if you're in the fire and you're being burnt in your life, it's because you didn't find the spiritual path that resides on the inside. Hence why the door is out front. The door comes as an individual that opens up this revelation for you to go on the inside. You need to deliver yourself. The spiritual path is found on the inside, hence why the kingdom is on the inside. It's not the external. The external is not sustainable. You cannot go to church or a building to listen to a message and think it's going to change you unless you do the inward orienting and taking the spiritual message and having it change you from the inside out, because it's going to be this SSDD, same stuff, different day. I would use a different word there, and I usually do, but I'm not going to. So I'm just going to say same stuff, different day, SSDD. And it repeats it twice. It's buy and sell, buy and sell. And look at what's in the middle. It's that Aleph Vav again. In oneness, connect. So you have the covenant of the pieces in 3 words here. The mother is on one side saying, take the spiritual path. It is the sword. Connect as one. Father, take the spiritual path. It's the plow. Or it's the plow and then the sword. It makes no difference. But the word ben is there, which means to build. You need to build your flesh from the inside out. And the sword and plow is coming because we can't avoid it. So it has nothing to do with not being able to. It means that we need to take something a lot deeper. Instead of looking at, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to buy and sell in the natural, when the whole verse, all of these verses have nothing to do with the natural.
Yeah.
And if you look from the surface orientation, like the priesthood of darkness is, you are never going to find the change and be the resolve that you need to be for yourself, but also to be the resolve the world needs. Because like Ken says all the time, it's an inside job. When
Yeah.
are we going to, as a collective, I mean, I know you and I understand this.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's many people on the channel that understand this. But when is the world, the collective, going to stop and go, oh, wow, we've been looking in the wrong place?
Which is a picture of what we all really do.
Yeah,
We're always looking to the outside.
exactly.
I mean, you know, as we mature, we look more and more to the inside, but we can all relate to that.
Yeah, exactly. So again, in looking at all of this, you know, with the signature, that's what this is, it's the signature, but it means the head of his name. It's just crazy. We have Shema, and of course it's not an ayin, it's an aleph. But then at the very end, the number of his name, aleph is added, and now we have revelation. So this is letting us know that through this process of the spiritual path, where the sword and plow are coming for us to build, because we start building as a son and then move into daughterhood, right? From ben to bat,
Mm-hmm.
and then from ach to achot. There's a progression in our growing, but we first must build, because mother and father in their spiritual path are both meant to build us from the foundation level up. And so even in the name, the door into the name is revealing something to you, and it leaves you with a question. Memhe means, what is it? So what is the name? Well, the name is connected to the fire and the water. The fire of purification, the living water that purifies us as well, those who are of living fire and living water that have the revelation that is given to them through the Father. This is, you do not know this by man, you know this through spiritual revelation. Like man didn't tell this to you. This was spiritually revealed to you. And that's why we have people coming to us now saying, man, you're confirming things that the Spirit told me. Now I know I can trust the Spirit. Well, that's because it's meant to be revealed through the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And why you can't really do anything with the language unless you have the connection with the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you can't apply it. The Spirit breath has to be a part of you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is connected to the buying and the selling. This is directly connected to the wise and the foolish virgins.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we take a look at even the Revelation 18, I'm not going to go into this whole thing because eventually these need to be broken down individually. But we have the Kayutha. Look at this. The Dalet is added in front of the Kayutha. Right? Here we have the Dalet, the door into the living, that have connected to Father in meekness, marked with his covenant, and have the oneness principle. So this is not the foolish that we're talking about here, because they're connected to Father in meekness. They have the power under control because they found life, because they entered in through mother. That's why the Dalet's on the front, on the prefix.
Mm-hmm.
And when it talks about let him calculate the number, do you remember when we went through the teaching series As a Man Thinks?
Mm-hmm.
And we were saying how creation and creating that power to create our reality comes through our heart and our emotions and our feelings. Look at, it's the same word, cheshab, to calculate, to think, to ponder. And it's het shuv, life that is found in the process of turning away from fear to build love. And it shows that the spiritual, the noon is added. So again, it's the spiritual path that Mother presents to you that you need to think about, you need to consider, you need to wrestle with these things, to find life, to turn from fear into love. And again, we have the Vav, so it's a meekness thing. So now in between Yod Hey, the completed mother who's a father, they have meekness within them. And then when it says to calculate, now we have a lamed in front of it. So calculate, allow it to instruct you through your mana, Memnoon, the two spiritual paths that have a powerful vision that are in between the two of them, covenant of the pieces, the seraphic message, the fiery message that comes between mother and father, so that you can what? Enter into oneness again. It goes over and over and over and over. And then when it mentions man, look at this. This is what you would never see, because man can be many forms. It can say man, it can say gibber, it can say anash. Look at what this says. Dabar, nasha. This is the son of man. They put it as man. This is now no longer a Ben. This is not one who is building as a fallen flesh, Ben. This is an heir to the throne. This is one that has been purified and selected and winnowed. That is of the pure and the innocent. And how did they find it? Through the Debar, through the word. Dob is bear. They went through the door of Mother Bear in order to build themselves, to raise themselves up by taking the spiritual path, allowing the consuming fire to come to purify them so that they could find the way of one. And they found it through the word. Debar means word, something spoken, but it also is considered into the written word as that which raises us up from our poor and destitute position into becoming first fruit leaders, which is our foundation. Because really, this is not 100-fold measure. It has 2 olives together. So this goes beyond that. This is like 1,000 to 10,000 fold measure. It's 2 double olives. Because
have you seen that? The 2
this
olives
is something. This
on
is
the father's side.
yeah. This is something that happens in Aramaic. It doesn't happen all the time, but this is something that you specifically see on Aramaic, because this is showing you the multiplied power of the 2 teachings of mother and father that have come together as one, uniting, giving your power, their power, manifesting it in the Christ anointing. What is it? 1,000 may fall to your right and 10,000 to your left. Yeah. Right here, because Shin Tov means foundation. The foundation that you need in the waters of chaos that will produce the measure of that which isn't going to harm you, that's going to fall on your right and on your left, because you have a strong foundation, because you went through the word and it built you and it selected you because you fed upon it. You allowed it to. So I wanted to connect that, because that is exactly, so if we go now back into the wise and foolish virgins, that Zeben, the Zayin Bet Nun, again, you are going to have to face the sword and the plow in order to build. It's the foundation and where you start your process. So then in verse 10, so this is now getting to the verse I wanted to look at, but I wanted to lay all that foundation so we didn't miss. This is connected to Revelation 13 and the mark of the living, of the Kayutha. that went the way of the right and the left. So that connects Psalm 91 to those who are of the living, that are of the Kayutha. If you are not of the living, and if you don't carry those marks in a frequency change, then that message doesn't really apply to you. Because if you don't have a changed, if you are still in serving self, so if you are in that selfish nature still, that psalm does not apply to you. Because these are those who went to the right-hand path first, who learned humility and meekness, or humility and teachability that led to meekness, that allows them to have 1,000 to their right and 10,000 to their left, that are walking as a response to the work that they already did within them because they faced the sword and the plow. Buy and sell. And it's interesting because when it says to go buy and sell, in connecting to oil, oil is the anointing. So what were they saying?
Right.
Your lamp is going out because you don't have oil. Mashach. You do not have the anointing within you. That is so amazing to me because what is mashach? It's mem, sheen, het. The waters of chaos for the waters shalom behind. The consuming fire that deals with your fallen beast ego nature. To find the het, life. You found Chava, you found the mother of all living, and now she's bringing you life, and you are part of the mashach. You have the oil in your lamp now. And because of that, your lamp will never go out of light because we're given a certain amount of life force to find the path. If you do not go the right-hand path, if you do not find the oil, if you do not go the way of light to fill it, then your light is diminishing and you're going to have to take from those who have the light because yours is going out. You never found the power generator to sustain you, which is your heart. So in the process of this, now finally moving on, there's a lot of talking here, connecting some dots. Yeah. Connecting some dots. We have the verse that says, and while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. So in all the verses leading up to it, we can see why this is happening at this place. Because like the wise said in the previous verse, you had everything given to you. The instruction was there. Like, it doesn't make any sense to us. Like, you should have been able to be here, but you have all this chaos on the inside. So what's going on? What you need to go, you need to face the sword and the plow, just like we did. And then you'll be able to enter in. But it comes to a point because we're talking about harvest. This is harvest language here. I'm getting goosebumps on my legs as I'm talking about this. This is harvest language here. So when they went to buy, so let's take a look. This is interesting. The very first word, you wouldn't see this because if you don't have that background of the Hebrew and the Aramaic, then you're not connecting what the foundational principle is of the divine masculine before the divine feminine, the linear and the spiral that then creates. When we take a look at this word here means when, after, and while. Okay, that's fine. So we're seeing that there's a process. So something is going on from something that happened previous. But if you don't see the foundational principle of the divine masculine, you're going to miss what this is saying. And this totally makes sense based upon what Ken was saying and what he's sharing with the compass and about taking it from the 2D to the 3D to make it so it's not just something that you're looking at, but something that is a vortex of life, taking the linear and the spiral to create. This Hebrew word means to be rounded, to be oval, to be a pitcher-like a jug. So this thing is saying in this word, and again, makes sense because the kaf is right there, which means to be filled as a vessel. It's saying that you need to be filled. This is why they realize, okay, now I need to go find mother. I need to connect to mother so I can fill my vessel and go through the door that reveals that I'm weak and feeble so I can be filled. I'm a pitcher. I'm a jug. I'm a vessel that is waiting to be filled. And the cough is also a word that means to be yoked, right? Let's use an English scripture so people can connect to. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. So is that my burden is light, as in light? Or is it because it's light? It's both. You must be connected to the yoke, which is the door that is coming to open this revelation to you to reveal that you're weak and feeble. Because remember, they were the ones that were helpless. They had weakness and they had helplessness because their light was diminishing. So they had to. They don't have a choice. They have to go this way. And with the vav, they need to be pierced. And when this little word is connected to an action word, a verb, it becomes a present action. So this is very much a now thing. So as we're even talking about this means right now, go and depart. You just, so anybody that's hearing this message that is under the service to self, this means the sword and plow is here now. You need to depart and go now. This is in the present tense. This is a present action, which makes sense because we live in the now anyway. So this is just speaking very personally to us. And we did talk about that the azel, that this meant weak and helplessness, that they need to go away and they're exhausted because their light is diminishing. And how interesting is it? I know I shared this last week, but it's Aleph Lamed, God, and on the inside is the sword and plow. So they're going because they need to face the sword and plow on the inside so they can be the strong leaders of the covenant and becoming one with God. Because they've chosen to not enter into oneness unity. And if you stay there, because again, even though this is a present moment, notice that when they went, this is still static. Where's the active? Where's the action in this? It's still in its lump of clay form. So in other words, if they go away and they do nothing, it's useless. It's useless. Everything is about the personal activation and doing something with it. So if you put it in your head thinking you know it, but it didn't translate to your hands, feet, and heart, it's useless. It's like, turn off the video. Don't even listen to it anymore unless you're going to do something with it. Because without activation, change doesn't happen. Hence why Hebrew and Aramaic are all verb driven. And I know that's sometimes hard because in the Western culture, we've always been told to process it through here. And the Hebrew and the Eastern cultures in the Orient are like, no, process it in your heart. And so this is a huge wrestle for us in our Western mindset. So then look at this. So now, so it's saying with the word before, if you don't do anything, it's useless. But this group decided to go and do something. So here's the useless phase. So what are they doing now? Now they're recognizing that they have to. Here's our buy and sell again. The sword and the plow meant for the son to build. And we have the lamed added in front of it, which means instruction, to teach. And we were talking about it before. Let me go because I did broke it down. Where are we? The rod of the teacher, authority, to accustom, learn, studied, put together, brought together, teach, trained up, study, and knowledge. And that it has the meaning, the base origin of to learn, to prick, to sting, incite, and goad. So they decide they're going to go through it, that they're going to do that. But notice it has the mem. So yes, this is good. This is mother's teaching, but you're in chaos still. So now you're going to have to be instructed in the time of chaos. And you're going to have to face the sword and the plow in order to build. Now, this is for those who choose to do this. because not everybody on the foolish side is going to choose this, but there are going to be those that are going to see it, they're going to recognize it, and they're going to go seek instruction. But it's not going to be coming from those who are of the wise that already have their lamps, the ones that was their peer group that they were with, because they were all together, right?
So the ones that are deciding not to do it, then they'll enter onto the other side of um,
Their
serving,
lamps, the
serving,
ones,
serving self, huh?
yes, and their lamps are going out. There is no light. So what this parable is saying is that there's a separation that is happening. So
So
those
some will
who,
turn and some won't, and they'll
right.
turn to self.
And so those who are of the light are being separated out. Those who are of the gross darkness are being separated out. And then there's those that are caught in the middle that are trying to go this way. But those who have already elevated up and out or moving in that process, these aren't teaching anymore. So in reality, they're seeking instruction in the waters of chaos, but those who have already done it are not there anymore. They've completely removed themselves. So the teachings are going to be coming from those who didn't quite make it, realized that they didn't make it, had potentially the teachings there, but didn't activate them. So in other words, they had the head knowledge of it. They didn't apply it. They're still here. They have the teachings. They realize that they're left as the teachers because they saw they saw the separation. They didn't make it. And now they're the ones that are teaching. And this will make more sense as we go on here, because then, so in the waters of chaos, so then what happens? We have the Aleph Tav Aleph, which means to come and bring. So this, we obviously know the Aleph Tav is the language, the Aleph through the Tav, the first, the last, the beginning, the end, the Alpha, the Omega, the Aleph and the Tav, that are the covenant really of one. It's mother and father that are coming together that bring this. And it's meant to be the interpretation of this, or I mean, the definition is that there's sign, miracles, pledge, tokens, and standards. And it means to come, arrive, reach, bring forth, journey, and pass through. And as an idiom, a plant that produces and bears fruit. So this right here is the standard. So these teaching shepherds that are here, that are in the chaos, that are actually the sword and the plow, as the sons who are building, that the other ones are coming to, they are now bearing fruit. Now, they didn't before, but they are now. So this is a separation, and you don't see this unless you can see the language. We're talking about the barley bride versus the wheat bride. We're talking about those who went through the process, because you have like the early on. So think about all the I'm just going to use this. Think about all the gurus that came way before. Let's talk about Rumi. Rumi was a Sufi. Now, Rumi, when you read quotes from Rumi, they just touch you to the heart core, but they were like the first fruits of the first fruits of the first fruits. I mean, they were way before their time in mysticism, in showing the way. So can you connect that to the ascended masters? In the positive sense, not the dual polemic, the ascended masters of light and the ascended masters of dark, because we have both. We have both in duality. But those that went to the path of the right hand. So we have all of these that are working behind the veil that are helping us. So you get that first fruit of the barley in our now that are being assisted by those who came way before, versus the ones that become the maturation of the wheat bride. So in this regard, this is the wheat bride that's teaching. The barley is separated. And all of this process is meant to be a sign, a signal, and a beacon, a standard measurement through the language, through the oneness principle of mother and father that marks us on the inside, that changes us, exempts us from judgment, because we no longer judge, because we found the oneness principle. So when we have then the bridegroom, so let's continue moving on. So coming and bringing as a standard, as the journey, those who are producing fruit, we have the bridegroom again. So we haven't seen a lot of the bridegroom now until at this point. And we shared with it before, we have the het. So this is pertaining to the living. We have tana, which this connects to the jackal and to the dragon that have become one through the spiritual path. This is not something spooky or scary and all of that kind of stuff. This is the ones who have found life, found chava, are marked, that are set apart, divided from those who are of death. The jackal connecting to Anubis, those who overstand death, that have found the oneness principle. So they are of the living. This is connected to the Kayutha. This is of the living. So when we look at this, to tie, connect in covenant, to enter into the family, to be connected as the bridegroom, chet tav. The chet tav is the abbreviated form of one. It's the Aramaic word. So in Hebrew, we have achat, right? Or chat. In Aramaic, we have chet tav. Chet. It means the same thing. But achad, the door to enter into unity, this is one who is marked in the unity. They are completed. They found life and they are completed at the end of their journey, because it's the tav. It's the end of the language. It's the end of the letters. So they found life and they are marked with life because they took the spiritual path that led them into oneness unity. Then we have the word for the who, what, and which, and we shared last week, because this word was also in the previous verse, was about that you are nothing without instruction on the inside, because the Yod Nun was added, right? And it was ayina, but the aleph was not on the suffix, because the process, the standard measurement, aleph, tav, aleph, bringing forth the standard in this journey of those who would fall under the category of those who have entered into life and who have become one, is because they went through the inward instruction on the inside where they became nothing. That doesn't mean that you empty yourself out completely. It means that what you've done is that you've taken the beast ego nature and you've relegated into no longer being there. The light instruction is in the inside. So you are still of ego, because this is showing us in our fallen flesh suit still. You still have an ego, which means I'm recognizing that you and I are still separate identities, right? I see you and me are the same, but I'm still in my flesh and you're still in your flesh. We haven't dissolved the flesh suit yet. But this purpose and this standard was, what did you do with the teachings? Did you have the instruction on the inside? Did it strengthen you? Because in the beginning, we were talking about they were weak and feeble. And we were even connecting that with, in the book of Revelation, the ones that were the weak and feeble ones that were of the Anash. It's like it said it twice in two different ways. Did you do what? Ayil means to be strong. And we saw this in the verse before, in the sense of development. Did you strengthen yourself? Did you raise your head up in becoming a chief leader? Did you get power and strength? Because that's what the teachings were. Because you're meant to be a pillar, a priest. That's what this whole thing was about. So you had to empty yourself of those things that were holding you down and separating you and keeping you in your lower intention in order for you to be strong, because the beast ego keeps you weak. And if you don't overcome it, you're going to try to take it. You're going to try to take energy from those who went to the path of the right hand because they compress light. You're going to be stealing their light, because that's what the beast ego does. So this is the place of the 0 point energy, the 369, because Ayin literally is Strong's 369. So connect it to Tesla. This is 0 point energy. And that makes sense because we have the Lamed on the inside. So this is light within you. that happens in the place of 0 point energy, which is like an eternal combustion that never ends. Because when you find nothing in that place of entering in, where it looks like nothing is at, is where everything is.
Mm-hmm.
And that is 0 point. But it takes the spiritual path. Hence why, again, the door is always given. The door has to come first. The revelation has to be opened. Mother's going to present it. Are you going to walk through it? Because that's really the question.
Mm-hmm.
It'll present itself, but are you going to actually be strong enough to face the sword and plow
Mm-hmm.
by entering in so you can build your temple? Because then it leads us to the very next word, which means to be ready. The bride who made herself ready, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bride who made herself ready, connect to Book of Revelation, Gileana. This is beautiful. I love to see how this progresses, because it's saying in the root word, which is a tet vav bet, the root of this word, in addition to just being ready, means to make ready, to prepare, to present, and provide. But it is also the same Hebrew word for tov, to be good, pleasing, pleasant, agreeable, kind, welfare, well, goodness, good things.
Mm-hmm.
So when we take a look at that very beginning of that right-hand path is so important to establish, because this is what sets you up so that your lamp has the oil it needs, so that you have a vessel, or the vessel, which is your garments of light that you're building. And what is at the beginning of this? It's building your blood.
Mm-hmm.
We showed before that light is in the blood, that blood is congealed light. This is so that you have good blood,
Yeah.
pleasing blood. And it's interesting because the very last part of it has the bet noon on the end of it, the son who builds. So we literally had a representation of the son who came before as Yeshua that was showing us how to build blood, how to build one family of one blood, Adam, mankind, Aleph, one, Dam, blood, to be able to show us the good path, where we're starting on the right-hand path so that we have the instruction necessary to make us strong, to be the priest in the pillars, where we're emptying ourselves of the things that would hold us back as anchors, that without the instruction on the inside, you really have chosen a path of, well, it's good for nothing. I am sorry, but you didn't go the way that you should. The instruction has always been here. Hence why the wise are going, I don't get it. It's always been here. What happened?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you get it? It's always been here.
Mm-hmm.
So I also think this is interesting because we're talking about the sword and plow. And I love how beautiful this language is. Because we have tet yod ba va, or tet yod bet in the middle, which in Aramaic, in the Hebrew, with combining together, this word means he improved or ameliorated the soil.
Mm-hmm.
So the plow going into the fallow ground is what made it to be good soil. Think of the parable of the seed. The
Mm-hmm.
seed that was sown on good soil. This is the word right here.
Mm-hmm.
The door that leads to the revelation of Mother's teaching in the waters of chaos that you're going to have to wrestle with, but it's going to give you power on the inside to build yourself through the 222 process, the 22 letters, the 2 paths that are meant to deal with your fallen flesh, because all of this is meant to prepare you. So this is talking about those who went through that made themselves ready, because what? The next word, turn, to be, was, turn. The revelation came, they connected to it, and it gave them the power of the Father, and they turned. And the hey vav means, alas,
Mm-hmm.
or woe. Did you turn or did you not? And so then when those who prepared themselves, made their soil good, went through the door, Dom is also the covenant of promise, right? The blood covenant, which means the covenant of promise. It has nothing to do with animal sacrifice other than sacrificing your animalistic instinct, your beast ego nature on the altar of your heart to get rid of those beastly things that we do to control and manipulate people, or be controlled and manipulated because you have so much fear. This is to turn so that they can do what? Not only does this mean to ascend, but this is the same word that means to enter and to bring, or to carry in. So think about the threshold covenant of the groom that comes and brings the bride over the threshold into the house. It is the covenant of promise. That's what that whole thing is. The groom is carrying you across the threshold. The groom is you. It's your higher self that is helping cross you over. It's the part that already found life that is coming to you to bring you into the oneness, because you separated yourself from yourself to experience yourself in this garden within. So carrying you across, or bringing you into, or leading you into. And this is the idiom. This is the idiom for harvest.
Yeah.
Those who have produced. So when we take a look at the letters themselves, the Ayin Lamed, so we know that this is connected to purpose, but the word Ayin, so the constituent letters, mean to look carefully at, to consider, to perceive, to meditate, to deliberated. He balanced exactly, weighed carefully, he read, he looked up, and a spring and a fountain and a landscape. So this is all showing that there was a level of research, there was a level of study, there was a level of carefully weighing and deliberating and meditating and considering upon that which was given for the eye to see, that was meant to instruct. The rod of the teacher, which then pierces you, right? It goads you, it stings you. But it's that process, sword plow, where you learn and you learned and you study and you put it together and you compile and you bring it together and you're trained up in having that which is necessary so that you can enter in. Because now in the time of harvest, you've produced fruit. You are not lacking at all. And these are the ones that are being brought in. So as the other ones are getting instructed, so the foolish are going to those who have, there's those that are still entering in. Why? Look at what we have here. Because they are revealed as those who were of Jacob's flock, the tribesmen that were revealed. Because in the beginning, they asked, what is this? They asked questions in Sheol. And then with the Ain, going back, they looked carefully at and they considered what was being presented to them in instruction. And they balanced it out and they weighed carefully while they were in the waters of chaos. Because they did ask, what is this? And because they did, now look at this as well. This is also meaning to be dark, to be dim, was weak, not is weak, was weak. To be dim, to be darkened, which means because it has the hay on the other side, they entered into the dark, hidden, esoteric teachings of Father. Because they looked at it, they weighed it, they considered it, they said, what is this? They saw the purpose of it, they went through the chaos, they realized there was something being presented. This is the root, memhe, is the root of manna, and they went into the dark, hidden teachings, which is meant for the tribesmen of Israel. Those who would wrestle and overcome, who would turn. And then, house. Lamed is in front of house. So remember in the mark on the forehead, the bayit of the Ain. So we have the Ain right here, and we have the house that has been instructed. This is the living letters of light. Lamed is directly connected to Le Or Shalom, the instruction of light. This is a lighthouse. You are now the light in the world because your house is full of light. So the reason why they're entering in is because they've become that. And the very first two letters is heart. So this has to do with the instruction on the inside. Lamed bet. Lamed, authority. Bet, inside. Simple paleo, the meaning for heart. You have light within your heart. Your whole vessel is full of light. This is so, so incredibly beautiful. So through the rod of the teacher, in learning and training up and bringing everything together and having this knowledge, because they allowed the sword and the plow to prick, sting, incite, and goad. By eat, in the word of the constituent letters that make up the symbol, means a house, home, family, a school, to domesticate, to tame. So this lighthouse is one who has authority on the inside because they tamed themselves. Because we're talking about the beast ego nature that would keep them in pride. These don't have that. Natav, mark and sign, it's shortened. It's interesting because this word, without having the bet on it, so the Tav, mark and sign, means mark, sign, musical note, again and once more. Bet, Tav, Vav. But without the bet, it's actually shortened. And it means once more to return, turn back, or do again. So again, this is the process of being allowed. Okay, so follow me here. If you have not built yourself into light, you're going to have to do it again in the same frequency in the lower density, because this is meant to graduate us. So unless your vessel is full of light, unless you become a lighthouse, you will have to go through the process again in the same density until you graduate. So some people will look at that as negative and some people will see it as positive, depending on where you're at. For me, I see the mercy, grace, and goodness and loving kindness that is extended to us, that we are not doomed to a place of where we are going to be in eternal hell, burning and in, hellfire for eternity, when this density we live in is already hell. It just means you have to keep asking questions until you find the answer. I'm telling you and sharing with you, not telling you, I hate that word. I'm sharing with you a lot of what you already know, but this is like that process of inculcation.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And in the root, they're saying that the root of this word is bet tav. So what's so fascinating is we know that this is the 222 journey, the two paths of the 22 letters, Hebrew, Aramaic, mother, father. But we can see that the instruction meant for our heart gives us the power on the inside through the 222. And then it's connected to the wedding. The lighthouse, which we know, which is beautiful when you think about this, because this has to do, again, making it very personal, marrying the divine feminine and the masculine on the inside, where they then, because the masculine comes up, the feminine comes down, we meet, and when the marriage happens, because we've activated the third eye, it then allows us to be crowned, Keter, with the crown of light, which is the restoration of Adam Kadmon. Based on the tree of life, based on the compass of what Ken's talking about, this is it. And you can see this right here. Because we have life as the first letter, and then we have the Lamed of mother and the Lamed of father, the two twin teachings of light that connect together. that are the instruction in the way of one. So now the two shall become one. It's literally found within the word that means a banquet and a wedding marriage
Wow.
festival.
Yeah.
And look at this. So the root. So when I look at Janet McGear's stuff, she digs deeper than what they show in the Peshitta. She traces it all the way back. So for her, the root is het lamed, which means to dig and to hollow out and to break, to wash, cleanse, purify. That which was once profane. What is profane? Something that is common. So something that is common, through the process of digging out and digging up and washing and cleansing and purifying you, makes you no longer common. Hence what we would know as set apart. Hence what we know as holy. Because you went through the process of finding life through instruction. The lamed, vav lamed, which is hidden in the middle, and look at what's on you've got the life of one. You've got the het on the prefix. You have the het on the prefix and the aleph on the suffix. The life of one. Mother brings forth a life, the mother of all living. Father then solidifies it in one, and we have lul in the middle, and that means a spiral staircase. Jacob's ladder.
Yes.
And from lula to loop to tie to turn into twist. This is the spiral vortex that Ken was talking about earlier. So you take the linear and the divine feminine through the spiral and connect them together. Now you have creation. So this is the wedding that creates the new being within us, because that which was divided is now being unified into light and love. It's like, are you kidding me? And then the last two words, and we'll finish up here. It's literally saying that we need to take a hold of this and apprehend it and maintain it. And look, fascinating. The root is Aleph, Chet, Dalet. And look what's on the inside. This is the pattern of the cherubim on the ark of the testimony. So when you have the twin covenants that have made their way from the outside into the inside, because again, if this is talking about a door that you're entering in, there's the separation of those who are on the outside versus those who get to go on the inside. The separation comes for those who have the covenants of mother and father that have made it on the inside of them. It's no longer external. I've got mother over here and father over here. It's taking both of those covenants and bringing them within you. That is the manifestation of the twin covenants of mother and father, divine feminine, divine masculine, that have become one on the inside of you. Because echad means to be one, make one, unified, joined, and combined. Wow. And chod, glory and splendor. The glory and splendor that happens on the wedding day, when we are unified, when the covenants of mother and father, which have been separated, are now joined back together in one on the inside of us. This is a rejoicing because mother and father divided themselves so that we could learn and mature. And on the wedding day, they get to come back together as one within us as we've become made one. This is like the greatest unification ever. Because that which was divided in the system of duality is the graduation day, where they don't have to be divided anymore either.
Yeah. Awesome.
And it starts in the process of being humble and teachable. And then we get to the point where it's door, gate, and portal. This also means to break through and to flow, to burst out and issue forth. So this covenant, because here's the root, Tav Resh Ain. This Resh Ain was where the bride and the groom at the very beginning showed up, and they looked like an adversary. Remember, we were sharing that at the very beginning when the bride and groom, that revealing was they initially looked like they were an adversary to the wise and the foolish that were in their fallen flesh. But at this point, they have now become unified, and now they become a special friend. And this is a different frequency, but yet the same as being a shepherd, companion, and friend, because the aleph and the hay are interchangeable. So that which once seemed to be, as mother and father, being an adversary to you in your fallen flesh, has all been unified into one through the covenant, the first initial covenant, which was the door and the portal that was to allow you to burst forth and to bust open and have the living waters flow and the light flow through you, because you've unified everything into one.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Amazing.
There's a lot there.
Yeah.
So a lot of dot connecting today to other verses.
Yeah.
And being able to see this progression. So it's amazing. I had no idea when I started on this journey and sharing with you about the wise and foolish versions that it was going to take us on the journey that I'm seeing. But I'm so grateful to see it, because the hope that's in the message, there's restoration everywhere. And the main message is, be humble, be teachable, be willing to go through the sword and the plow, because the process of building yourself as a son into becoming a daughter allows you to become a bride and then the queen. And that allows you to enter into this place where that was once adversarial, aka the sword and the plow, has then been seen as something that was a catalyst that produced the nature of oneness in you. Because the other part of that word, the end of it, Resh Aleph, Ra, means those who see, who were raised up from being poor and destitute, now to be the first fruit leaders, those who have the Mashiach anointing, the Christ anointing, that were instructed, they turn and teach, they tame the beast, they found the thousandfold message, and they are unified as one family. All because they were willing to enter in and let Mother start the work.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is. You know, we know it's supposed to be a message of hope, and we knew that, but the English version just falls short. And however much we try to make it be a message of hope, it was difficult.
Yeah.
To make it a message of hope.
Well, there was always division.
Yeah, it just divided. Yeah. Especially Paul's teachings, which is the most misunderstood. They divided. That's where all of your different denominations come from.
But yet it's because they didn't have the oral tradition to understand the codes, to realize that Paul was writing esoteric stuff meant for the mature audience, not the immature audience. Those who had already entered into bride status, waiting to become the queen in entering into the fullness of intimacy of the wedding day, which we're seeing the fullness of it in the verse that we're digging out right now.
Yes.
He was writing to them.
Yeah.
He was writing to the wise,
yeah.
the mature that went the way of the right hand, that got past that black and white, lower ego teaching of immature to the mature status. And so when you take a mature message and you give it to someone who hasn't gotten past that milk side, you can see why it all got twisted. Even in the English, they at least wrote it that Peter said, yes, there are some things that Paul says that are difficult and the unlearned twist. So at least they were kind enough to keep that in English. But many times it's like, well, why is it hard to understand? Because when you read it in the surface English, it's like, oh no, this seems pretty cut and dry. Until you dig into the Aramaic, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this isn't anything. It's like, no wonder why people either hate Paul or they love him, but most of them at this point are getting to where they just want to throw him out. And his writings are some of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. It's like, wow. But if we don't have the oral teachings of being able how to interpret it, we're always going to be left with wanting something more. We will never be satiated, and we will never be brought to the banqueting table, because all we're going to have is scraps. It's going to be the same crusty bread that has been sitting there for thousands of years, always wanting and leaving us with wanting more, going, there has to be something more.
Right.
And the more is here.
It is.
It's an amazing time to be alive.
I know. It is.